if you're looking for a glass half full, I mean, to me, the most encouraging thing, and I know it's hard to know exactly what interest level there is from other schools, but, he was mentioned with like Kentucky and Alabama. I mean, there were good schools reportedly that were pursuing him. Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. John Kurtz, Derek Young, Cole Manbeck, all here with you. We've got action, folks. We've got some action, all right, in the transfer portal. Real tangible things happening to talk about with K-State men's basketball, which calls for a toast from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Get your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon or your 360 vodka. Be ready for whatever the spring is going to throw at you. Nice day where you can hang out and drink on the patio. That's great. Make sure you have it on hand for whatever get-togethers you're having. It's perfect for any occasion. Thanks to our friends at Holiday Distillery, great K-State fans who are right here with all of us. All right, guys, how many shows have we done where we're sitting here like, all right, come on, that little gif with a guy with a stick just like pokes out, like, do something. Well, they did something. K-State gets a commitment in the transfer portal. Abdi Bashir from Monmouth, who is certainly one of the most dynamic shooters and scorers that was available in the transfer portal. Scored 20 points per game. Obviously playing at Monmouth, small school, 38% three-point shooter on a very high volume of threes. So that's good. And you know what? Before we even get into anything else, let's cut it off right there, right? There's some good here, okay? DY, how you feeling about Abdi Bashir?
I actually think he gives them something that they needed last year that they didn't have. Like a guy that can really go out and create his own shot and score like 20 or 30 on any given night. Because, I think Max Jones here and there could probably get you 20, but in terms of creating his own shot from the perimeter, he probably wasn't going to do that. Brendan Hausen wasn't going to do that. Definitely Dino can create his own shot, but, I mean, he struggled to score for most of the season. So it's just like they didn't have that. So I think this is actually an element where I don't know if it's a great replacement for Brendan Hausen, and I know we'll talk about that probably a little bit more later because he's entering the transfer portal now or already has. But I don't see it a one-for-one replacement. I think because this is just something they just didn't have last year, a guy that can really go get a bucket at any given time. And I think you have to have that in college basketball anymore because they let you get a little bit more physical in college basketball. So to be able to create your own shot, create a little space for yourself when maybe as an offense, you're not getting the space you need. I think that's important. There's obvious flaws in his game. He's, basically from inside the three-point line, as inefficient as they come. Some real question marks on the defensive end. Now, if I'm going to try to defeat some of those preconceived notions about, struggle from the two, really thin, not sure if he can defend. In terms of his 2-point inefficiency, I think that is glaring. But it also could be a product of him just being at Monmouth and the coach saying, get up as many shots as you can because you're the only guy we have, because that's essentially what he was. So and terrible 2-point shots is not really something that has been a problem since Jerome Tang got to Kansas State. So you have to think that maybe some of that erodes and he just becomes a more inefficient player in general. Now, I get it. Maybe he's not going to get to the rim and finish well because he's never done that well, and he is pretty thin for Big 12 basketball. But I don't know that he'll be asked to do that a ton. He's going to create a shot from the outside more than anything. Defensively, we'll see. That's probably going to be a work in progress no matter what. But if I trust the staff over time to do anything, it is to coach defense.
Yeah, I mean, the good, obviously, he led the country in three-point makes with 127, and he did it on 38.3%, which is
off the bounce, too. Yeah, off the bounce. I like that.
Yeah. Now, to your point, D.Y., I do wonder, he's not overly explosive. He did create his shot more off the dribble than what we were seeing from a Brendan Hausen, and he can get to the rim some, but everybody was joking about he's never had a dunk in his 2 years of college basketball, and he's 6'7". So, I do think he can create his own shot some. I do wonder about how it translates to the Big 12 level and his ability to get by guys. But he's 6'7", so that's going to help him get shots up.
To create his own shot, I don't think he gets by guys. I think he's that good of a ball handler, and he has that kind of length, being 6'6", that he gets his own shot, gets to his spot.
his turnover rate a little higher than you'd like to see, but his usage rate was so incredibly high that it makes sense that his turn. Like, I mean, he took 31% of Monmouth's shots on the.
Yeah, that's why I think some of the bad shots came because the Monmouth coach said, "Do everything you can."
Well, let's talk about that real quick because King Rice, I saw KSU_fan pointing this out on KSO on the boards as well. King Rice, the head coach of Monmouth, like they're not known for, first of all, they're not known for defense, for really offense. So they're really not known for quality basketball. They were 268th in Ken Palm this last year. Their offense ranked 225th. Their defense ranked 293rd. Last season, the year before, 198th team overall, 186th offensive rating, 221st defensive rating. 2023, number 348 out of 363 teams in the country overall, with an offensive rating of 354 and a D rating of 282. So, they're not really known for defense or offense. They don't take the most efficient shots in the world. So I think that's probably a product of the system where, you look at a guy like Bashir, who's 37-89, 41.6% on shots at the rim, 58 of 168 on other 2-point shots. That's 34.5%. 168 like mid-range twos, shots not at the rim. That's not good. Like, you do not want to see it. And to your point, K-State under Jerome Tang hasn't taken a ton of those. So I don't think that's going to be like, they can probably coach that out of him, and make sure he's either getting to the rim or shooting more threes.
I don't even know how much they got coached out of him. I think it was just like, that's what he had to do.
Yeah. 99.9 offensive rating overall at Monmouth this last year and a 31.6 usage rate, 48.5% effective field goal percentage. Does not rebound the ball well. You'd like to see those numbers with him being 6'7", get after it a little bit on the glass. But again, he's rail thin, 160 pounds, which, let's see what Phil Byer and the strength staff can do at K-State to get him a little stronger. Regarding the defensive component, guys, I'll just give you this. Like, his defensive rating was really poor. Now, I think there are plenty of criticisms around defensive rating that are out there. It's a hard formula to really calculate. But Evan Miyakawa at evanmiya.com has, a formula called the Bayesian Performance Defensive Rating, which reflects the defensive value a player brings to his team when he's on the court. It incorporates a bunch of different numbers, but in summary, his DBPR, so Defensive Bayesian Performance Rating, was the worst on Monmouth's team. It was a negative 2.08. It was 112th out of 116 players in his conference in the CAA, and there were only 65 players worse out of 2,983 eligible players in the country in terms of DBPR when it comes to that metric formulated by Evan Miyakawa. So not perfect science, and again, it's really hard to calculate because it's dependent upon who's around you, and he might not have had any good defensive players around him.
Yeah, he may not have, and I'm just going to try to look at this glass half full because doing the glass half empty thing is pretty depressing. We've done that quite a bit lately. Is like, what was his willingness to defend, and can you flip that? And sure, there's questions whether they could flip that or not. They had a hard time doing it with Doug McDaniel. But if you can just flip the willingness, now he's had some interviews where he said he's committed to becoming a better defender, and that's what he wants to work on in the offseason. So that's a good sign and a step in the right direction. But I also wonder if it's just a lack of willingness because he had to devote so much energy to the offensive end because literally he was their only good player.
Well, first of all, I would just like to apologize to Monmouth and their fan base on behalf of Fremont after Cole just needlessly sideswiped them 5 minutes ago. So, no need for that. Okay, we're already stealing their player. We're pillaging their roster. No need to kick them while they're down. I will also say, if you're looking for a glass half full, I mean, to me, the most encouraging thing, and I know it's hard to know exactly what interest level there is from other schools, but, he was mentioned with like Kentucky and Alabama, I mean, there were good schools reportedly that were pursuing him. Mm-hmm. So if you're just going to judge, I mean, like, Nate Oates has been to a Final Four and an Elite Eight in back-to-back years. Clearly, it seems like, Kentucky's put together a really good roster, with Mark Pope this year and had a nice run this past year to the Sweet 16. Like, it seems like they know what they're doing too. So that, I think, should give you some hope as well here about what this could be.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting what Rule is because, like, on those teams, is he going to be a 30-minute player? Probably not. He's probably looking maybe at 20 or so. What's he going to be for Kansas State? It'll depend on how the rest of the roster shakes out.
Yeah, and Arkansas KU also, I believe, had Zoom calls with him. Again, don't know the seriousness of the interest, but, there was a graphic, I think Tipton put it out, BY, that had Arkansas, Kentucky, KU, and Alabama as 4 schools that were going to be having Zoom calls with him last week.
Alabama came in at number 2, and they really wanted him. I can confirm that. And I think that even at the last hour, when they were discovering that from him that he was going to pick Kansas State, I think they were fighting that notion and trying to get him, dissuade him from doing so.
Well, and Nate Oates is the biggest proponent of analytics, right, and not taking mid-range twos. So, they saw the film and they were like, yeah, we can fix that. And they see the 3-point numbers and, what Bashir does. So, that's highly encouraging that a program like Alabama and the system that they run wants him. Just a couple more numbers on him, guys. 92 of 106 at the free throw line. That's 87%. That's really encouraging. Some big games, obviously, 5 games of 30 points or more, 18 games of 20 points or more. And they played some tough opponents in the non-con.
He lit up Rutgers, and it was efficient in that game. And he scored a lot against Michigan State, but wasn't as efficient. But.
Yeah, Rutgers, he had 38 points, 11 of 23 from the floor, 10 of 17 from 3, 6 of 6 from the foul line. Rutgers had the 116th defense in Ken Palm. Michigan State, he had 20 points, 7 of 22 from the floor, 3 of 11 from 3. That's the number 4 defense in the country this last year. Now, Seton Hall, an awful team this year, but Seton Hall not awful defensively. They were 89th in Ken Palm defensive rating. He went 11 of 19 from the floor, 6 of 9 from 3, 28 points in that game. Auburn, they played at Auburn. He went 4 of 15 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, 15 points, 4 assists, 2 turnovers, number 9 defense in the country. I actually pulled his games. So they had 5 games against top 100 Ken Palm defenses. He struggled against Hofstra in 2 games. It combined 7 of 30 from the floor and 2 of 18 from 3 in those 2 games. Hofstra was number 94 in Ken Palm defense. And then I rattled off the other games. They played Wichita State in the non-con, Youngstown State, Stephen F. Austin. Those are 3 top 150 defenses. Kind of hit and miss, but again, it's dependent upon the talent.
I know it. Yeah, and I know it. We're getting up to a break, but he's probably the only one on that scouting report by those teams too.
Yeah. So good. Solid addition. I owe the staff an apology after, kind of railing on things on April 7th, 2 days ago, where things stood in the portal. And it seems like some things are in motion now behind the scenes that maybe we're not aware of. And we were recording the show when we found out that it was going to be Bashir.
Well, I'm about to do something that is, probably wildly irresponsible and completely unfair. I'm going to make 2 loose situational comps here. Okay, don't get this twisted. This is not a direct player comp, but situational comps that I have thought of here with Abdi Bashir. All right. So who's the last? I guess Tyler Perry probably counts there too. So that this would take out some of this. But I was going to say, the last time I can remember, looking at a mid-major guard that was coming to K-State and being like, damn, that's an eye-popping 3-point shooting number, and a guy who takes a lot of threes and knocks them down at a high clip was Marquise Noel. That worked out pretty well. Okay. Eventually, I guess it did take some time there. The other is I was just going to say, look, last year I wanted the shooter and the guy that could just go get a bucket at any time when they really needed it. And that was Caleb Battle. And it just haunted me for an entire year that they didn't land him. So, I think Caleb Battle is significantly more athletic than Bashir is. And, able to get to the rim and maybe actually dunk a basketball. That is, Cole, that was not a joke talking about that. That is one of the wildest things I've ever heard. This man is 6'7" and scores 20 points a game. And in 2 years of college basketball, he did not dunk a basketball once.
He's not a finisher. He's a shooter.
Which, you would like to think you get a run out and in transition, a dunk at 6'7",
but defensively, he wasn't up. So that's part of it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You can be the guy lollygagging defensively and still be close to half court. And then, so the ball gets poked out and then there you are for a run out. 2 years of one of the highest usage rates. 2 years of one of the highest usage rates in the country at 6'7", scoring 20 points per game to not have a dunk is one of the most mind-blowing basketball statistics I've ever heard in my life.
I think it goes to show you how bad his supporting cast was and how bad they would be if he wasn't on that team too.
Well, now we're just back to taking shots at Monmouth again.
When you have a player like him and you're still in the 300,
Well, let's say this. He's going to come into a Big 12 high major strength and conditioning program that he probably didn't have the resources at Monmouth. Again, slandering Monmouth on this show. So better resources. Let's see what Phil Byer can do with him. Add a little bit of strength and muscle to him and get him a little stronger, maybe a little more explosive, and maybe we see a dunk this year at Kansas State.
Boy, I don't know about all this. Is Monmouth blue? I was going to say, am I wearing Monmouth colors right now?
I think Monmouth has actually been in the play-in game in Dayton or a few years ago.
Been a handful of years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of blue. All right. I mean, I've got some Monmouth colors on right now. Hopefully you can get them at Home Field Apparel. Let's see. Home Field Apparel.
I don't think so.
I'm rocking Home Field right now. I got my campus pullover jacket that I've shown you guys before. John's got it too. It's awesome. I got a Home Field hat on, one of several hats over at homefieldapparel.com as well.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and turn on Monmouth here. If they're not important enough to be at homefieldapparel.com when they have 100 plus schools, then they don't mean anything. So I'm with you. All the Monmouth slander that you want is perfectly welcome. Homefieldapparel.com is where you can get virtually any other school that you want out there, including K-State, with 50 plus K-State designs. You can check out Cole's entire outfit, sponsored by Homefield Apparel right there, which is great to see. DY is at Homefield?
I believe so. That it isn't.
I believe it's Homefield Apparel.
I think it is. Yeah.
You can get a bunch of other teams there like DUI as well, and use promo code 3MOD24 for 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3MOD24 for 15% off your first order, and we are back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win real money this March? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Forget about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. And when it comes to the massive payouts, DraftKings dunks over all the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's as simple as that. All you have to do is pick which players you think will score, rebound, get assists, and fill up the stat sheet, and you can win. It's that easy. So turn your college basketball knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. So download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited, 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promo.
All right, so the portal giveth, the portal taketh away. Brendan Hausen into the transfer portal, something I think we, for a couple of weeks, it felt like was definitely possible and has now come to fruition. In some ways, yes, you can look at it as swapping out Abdi Bashir for Brendan Hausen here. I think we all feel very strongly this is somebody the staff did want to keep, though. This was not a mutual parting of ways here, really. And we'll see what happens with Hausen. There have been plenty of rumors about where he may be headed. But initial reaction to K-State losing the guy that they brought in to be the sniper last year and who this year didn't. He did wind up shooting 38% from three this season, right? So now you're bringing in a 38% three-point shooter to replace him.
Yeah, and 38% 3-point shooter. I think that dipped a little bit during the Big 12 play, and just seemed like he kind of faded down the stretch from beyond the arc a little bit, if we're being completely honest. And maybe that's because he really turned up his energy on the defensive end and became a better defensive player. So his time at K-State maybe not wasted in that regard. Heard some rumblings even right around the portal opening that there was a connection between him and new Iowa head coach Ben McCollum. Then it sounded like, things had kind of settled and there was an agreement almost in place to an extent, whatever that can be, verbal or otherwise, that he'd probably stay at K-State. And then over time, that seemed to kind of reverse itself as well. So obviously, yes, I think that there at one point the plan was for him to return, and they would have liked him to return. So, but he's not. And I'll just kind of put it simply. I think Brendan Hausen is probably a player that, while he adds some value to your team, you should be able to replace him fairly without much of a challenge or without difficulty. I think there's quite a few Brendan Hausens that typically come available in a given year. With that being said, it is kind of a bummer that there's a guy you wanted to keep, but you couldn't get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, you guys said it already. K-State wanted to keep Brendan Hausen. They made it a priority, and then, found out over the weekend he was going to move on and announced on Monday that he was entering into the portal. It's interesting. These heard from lists are always interesting and kind of eye-opening, and you have to take them with a grain of salt because the player is incentivized to inflate the list. And I'm not saying that's what Brendan Hausen or his agent's doing here necessarily, but it says he's heard from Gonzaga, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Virginia, Cincinnati, etc. So far since entering the portal. Iowa probably makes the most sense to what you said, DY. Interesting, Gonzaga has outreach. Wouldn't be surprised if Texas gets some serious interest. Uric Malagi heading there has a good relationship with Brendan Hausen, obviously. So Sean Miller wants him. Maybe Brendan Hausen will consider the Longhorns as well. Look, I like you guys think, he is a replaceable player. He is a quality shooter. I mean, almost 39% from three this last year, nearly 11 points per contest. He had the second highest offensive rating on the team, really, out of the guys in the regular rotation behind David Gasson. I mean, Ugonna Onienzo had the highest offensive rating on the team, but I'm not counting him really in the regular rotation.
And
to your point.
And that's why, I know it might be the best stat or the best illustration you can have of players. There's offensive and defensive ratings, but it's why I have a hard time giving them as much clout in stock as some of even the more respected analytics people or statisticians are, whether it be Cole or even KSU_fan, because offensive and defensive, if you tell me Ugonna Onienzo has got the highest offensive rating on the Kansas State team, then I think it's a pretty flawed stat.
It's conducive to what you had said to me yesterday or earlier this week, that it's conducive to big men, because obviously they're taking shots at the rim and they're going to have a higher field goal percentage. And as a result, their O ratings are typically going to be higher. So I guess I should put it like this. Hausen's 116 offensive rating this last year was the highest among K-State's backcourt. Yeah. So that's something to take under consideration. Now, only a 16% usage rate. So again, that's, he doesn't have the ball in his hands.
I was going to say, and again, it's almost like he's a front court player because he doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot. He's catch and shoot.
Now, one of the concerns with Hausen down the stretch was fatigue, and he played 28 minutes a game. He started all 33 games this year, and over the final 11 games of the season, he shot 22 of 69 from three. They're under 32%. So, he struggled down the stretch. Again, only 45 two-point attempts on the year, 4 of 9 at the rim. So never drove it, obviously. And then, 232 three-point attempts. So that's a guy like Bashir, and they're not, necessarily similar players. I'm not saying it's just flipping one for the other, like you said as well, DY. But, Bashir shot 38.3% on a very high volume of threes, and really the same percentage as Brendan Hausen this last year. And he's a little taller, so can probably get shot up a little bit more.
The difference being that he can create his own shot and shoot off the dribble much better than Hausen. They both are not very good at the rim.
Yeah. I liked Brendan Hausen. I think we all did as a person, and he did some nice things and was fun at K-State. I'll always remember the Iowa State fan flipping him off from the stands and Ames in the background of that shot. And I know we loved interviewing Brendan Hausen on the Wildcat NIL show at the golf tournament at Colbert Hills. He was a blast. But certainly wish him the best of luck. It stings a little bit, but helps that you brought a guy in within 2 days of the staff finding out, to replace or at least get some new blood into the program there.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of those thoughts. I think replaceable enough, but also, the other piece of this is just wanting to retain more of the roster continuity. That's obviously been a big talking point. Now, they also have not had other guys jumping into the portal that we thought would. So far, I mean, they are doing a pretty good job in maintaining a lot of the roster, whether people like it or not, which is maybe another discussion for another day. But yeah, if it's somebody that was as productive as you just outlined, and it was somebody that you wanted back, and you're trying to go with this Houston model and roster retention and building more of a program that way, then it is in many ways a blow to see that he's leaving, especially when it looked like at one point he was a guy that was going to come back. So, take it for what it's worth. Bashir definitely helps offset things. Maybe that is another part of the conversation here. Like we're still sitting here and have not seen the other entries into the portal from this roster. Like what do we think is cooking there right now?
The lack of it, or at least the delay of it, even for Buddy Rich, kind of has perplexed me. I keep trying to grasp straws and trying to figure out and define what's happening, and really haven't come to a conclusion. Other than now, if you buy into a little bit of the simmering buzz behind the scenes, is that Ugonna and Yenso could come back. Now, I think the circumstances are going to be far different. I think the expectations and the role is going to be similar to the minor one that he had last year. And with that, he would have to accept, let's be honest, a lot less money than he took last season. So I think that's on the table from what it sounds like. I think between the three of us, I've had enough people kind of say this is a possibility to probably put some, real percentage chance to this unfolding. Now, if by fall, I haven't heard anything different since, kind of discovering that he's probably going to be someone that enters the portal. But up until this point, and I don't even know when the portal closes, someone else would have to confirm that, but he has not entered.
I believe it's April 22nd. Does that sound right?
Still almost two weeks. So,
yeah, I can't support that. That one is stunning to me that it's being considered. It doesn't make sense, And look, part of it's probably dictated. Like we still don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek Smith, right? Like when are we going to get a waiver answer? I mean, come on, can the NCAA move on that at least so you know what you need to look at in your roster at this point? I mean, it's been a month since the season ended for Kansas State. Those waivers have been submitted weeks ago. I don't think we think Max Jones is going to get his approved, but it would sure be nice to know if, Tyreek Smith is going to be approved or not and get an answer there. And then that dictates maybe what they do with Anienzo. But for me, it's move on, regardless. Yeah, the rebounding was so dreadful this year. The defense was so bad when he took the floor. He's just not a fit for what
that offensive rating, though.
Yeah. Some dunks at the rim, and he actually shot free throws at a high clip when he actually got to the free throw line. But, and I would say this, DY and John, like, Ugonna Anienzo got paid a ton of money this last year, and he looked unmotivated when he was on the court, in my opinion. And heck, he didn't even hardly see the court the first 2 months of the season, okay? And now you're talking about, if he comes back, a huge pay cut in his last year heading into college basketball. Where's the motivation going to come from then? Making far less money. Like, I just struggle with that. And, I hate to talk that way about an individual player. It's the culture we're in now a little bit. I'm not trying to bag on him too much, but it wasn't a fit. I liked him coming in from Kentucky. I thought he had a lot of potential, but man, it was rough when he was on the court this year.
I would say I would agree with a lot of that. Like, I understand the continuity, the value of continuity and wanting to, pour into someone, but there's not a lot of scenarios where it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it, and I'll try to be as gentle with this as I possibly can too, but just you only have so many spots on the roster where you can really take up guys that you don't feel like are going to be big contributors to you next year. And you're going to have 2 freshmen coming in that, we'll see. Maybe one of them does surprise. That's certainly not out of the question, but don't appear to be instant impact guys. Taj Manning has been a great program guy, and I think we imagine that he's going to be back. But I don't think anybody is looking at him like someone who's going to be a big contributor. And then if you got Onyenso there, you hope for a big jump from David Castillo, but if he stays as the same guy, I don't know if that's somebody that can contribute a ton necessarily next year too. So you can't have like a third of the roster or over a third of the roster, in positions like that.
And let's be honest, they need, and Cole mentioned this in our group chat yesterday. We need to free up some spots unless they're going to go beyond the 13.
Yeah. Well, part of that is because, it looks like they may have another guy wrapped up, and we'll talk about that coming up in just a moment.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Well, we've alluded to it a couple of times that Jerome Tang and company have been hot on the trail in Europe, going after a couple of prospects, and there's a lot of buzz building for one in particular in Elias Rapik from Europe. Now, this is where it gets very, very confusing. He's German, playing for Alba Berlin, where he averaged 4 points and 2 rebounds per game, but that is the highest league over there in Europe, which is very, very competitive, right? Second best league outside of the NBA that's out there. I know a lot of people have pointed out he's teammates on that team with David McCormick, who is a professional who played at Kansas, that you might recognize the name there from. This is a league, I believe someone said when Jacob Pullen first started in this league as a professional, he scored like 5 points per game. So it's a tough league. It's hard to know exactly how that translates, but don't get too sidetracked by just that in terms of how you're projecting him at this level. He's somebody that looks pretty skilled. Again, probably a defensive liability, just based on a little bit that we know about him, but certainly seems to have some offensive skill. And at least to me is very, very intriguing. I think this is an intriguing route to go.
Yeah, and we're using that defensive liability in terms of not looking athletic comparably to some of the guys on the court or physique-wise, but he's played in that top league, so you wonder if that just naturally becomes less of a liability when coming over and playing in college. I'll ask Cole when I'm done here to kind of give up some of the numbers that he did when not playing in that league, because that would be maybe more of a translation to the college level and an idea of what his upside would at least be. My take is, from the few highlights that are available, obviously not a ton, would be, and I hate doing this, he's almost like that stereotype European international player where he's more crafty than anything, a really good passer, elite vision, high basketball IQ, just seems to understand the game, where to be, how to get to his spots without being the most athletic person on the floor. And that's what you see when a lot of these international guys go to the NBA, and that's how they kind of get it done. So he kind of, to me, is a reflection of that. And we talk about this athleticism thing, some questions there, which I kind of have them, but then there's like a highlight here or there in isolation where you see him go for like a 360 dunk or a windmill dunk. It's like, well, maybe he has a little bit more than we think too.
Yep. And again, a guy that gets into a college strength and conditioning program, not that they don't have the resources in the top Euro league in the country, but, they can probably do some work with his body too. It seems like he plays a little bit below the rim a lot, but he looks darn efficient when he does it. And I think very skilled, brings a lot of qualities you like. A lot of these European guys are typically very skilled, looks like a really good passer, good court vision, efficient. And again, you mentioned it, guys, he's playing in the best European league in the country. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Euro basketball. I'm trying to learn more about it as K-State's starting to prioritize it. But Alba Berlin, top Euro league, and he averaged 4.4 points and 2.2 rebounds in 27 games. And people see those numbers and they're like, what's to be excited about? But again, like DY, you and I were texting about, he's playing against guys that are better than college competition that he's going to see at the college level. Like, he's playing against 25, 30-year-olds in that league. You mentioned the Jacob Poland thing. I'll let you mention that as well on this show. But like, there's a video clip on Twitter. He's throwing a lob to David McCormick. David McCormick was on the national championship team at KU, 3 or 4 years ago? Like, those are the types of guys he is playing with and against at that level.
I was going to see if I can.
He's 21 years old.
He's 2004. So, 21 as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, and I like that he's 21 because he comes in with a little more experience. He's played against, elite competition. He's 6'7", and so people that bring up the top EuroLeague numbers, if you want to go down a level in 5 games in the Germany Pro B League earlier this year, which is probably a little bit more comparable to the college level, he averaged almost 20 points a game, 6.8 rebounds, 6 assists, 59% from the floor, and 37% from 3 in those 5 games. So, from a comp standpoint, Parker put this on our Discord earlier, guys. Armin Jovic, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's a European scout, specializes in European prospects, really respected guy. I've started following him on social media as well. He compared Rapik to a college version of Draymond Green from his Michigan State days, which I think is an interesting comparison.
Not lofty at all.
Yeah. Now I found a tweet from January 2023 from College Basketball Europe. Quote, Elias Rapik should be on a lot of D1 radars. Not many guys around combining size with that type of ball handling, vision, and flair. Armin Jovic, who I just mentioned, he later quote tweeted that post in December of 2024. So much more recent. Quote, pretty crazy how under-recruited Elias Rapik was during the 2023 class by D1 schools. He's not the most productive player under 20 years of age at that time in the EuroLeague, playing 15 minutes per game, but big testimony to Elias's growth, who was improved, but was a D1 player then. And that was in 2023. So, I think he's a guy that's pretty well respected in the Euro circuit. I think a lot of D1 schools have interest in him now, but I think K-State feels very good about where they sit in this one.
Sounded like BYU was one.
Yeah, DY, they wanted him, right? That was the belief a couple weeks ago. They wanted him pretty badly.
Yeah, I know Louisville is at a few games too. It's hard. I will say, I talked to someone that kind of has influence on the international scene. They play things closer to the vest than even the American high school players. So it's really hard to gauge what that interest is or isn't.
Yeah. Look, I have no idea really how the international stuff works. So I think
I don't even know what his eligibility would be when he gets over.
It was, a lot of people have asked that question to me too. And I'm like, I don't know, especially these days, I don't know. I have no idea.
It's an interesting question because he would have been technically classified, in that tweet there, 2023 class was when he was eligible to go to D1 schools to the college level. So it makes me think he'd be a junior when he comes to Kansas State. But it's like BYU had a guy this year that was playing professional basketball last year. He's a big man. He started to pick up a lot more minutes down the stretch. I'm blanking on the name. And I believe he was classified as a junior in his first year at BYU this last year, first year in college. So that would be my guess, but I'm not an expert on this. I can't tell you for sure. I don't get too caught up in eligibility anymore, though. Seems to be a fair thing.
I mean, well, not only that, but it's just such a year-to-year task to keep people on the roster even, so this is somebody that's already played professionally. So yeah, certainly he would have a ton of options. He probably goes well for this year. They need him for this year.
But I don't know if this is true, but I pulled up Google and it said the last time Monmouth made the NCAA tournament was 2006. Actually.
Oh, wow.
They were really good in 15-16 and they beat like 5 power conference teams, but still missed the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I was probably thinking of Mount St. Mary's as the team that's made the play-in games.
In 2015-16, they got ranked in the AP poll and beat UCLA, Notre Dame, USC, Georgetown, and Rutgers, and still missed the NCAA tournament.
Oh, yeah. Anthony Winchester spent a lot of time in Europe a couple weeks ago recruiting. Jerome Tang joined him eventually on that trip. I think, Matthew Grusic, the 6'6" guard that we talked about a couple shows ago, he's someone they feel very good about as well. So then you start thinking about spots. If they land Grusic and they land Rapik, like we think is going to happen, that's 3 newcomers coming in. We got to know what's going to happen with Ani Enzo, because if Ani Enzo is in the fold, and let's say Byfall is out, but let's say Tyreek Smith is in, like that's 12 guys with Rapik and Grusic at it. out of 13. Like, that leaves only room for one more transfer. Now, that's not enough. Like, John, to what you just said, like, there's too much, hate to say the word dead weight, but, like, there's too many guys on the roster that aren't going to be able to contribute probably next year, because I don't think McGee and Xavier Wilson are going to be big contributors as freshmen coming in.
David Castillo would have to be in it.
Yeah, David Castillo would have to make a jump. CJ Jones would have to make a significant jump from where he was last year. Like, I think they need a twitchy guard that can still get to the rim as well, and obviously I think they need a really solid big. Now, there's 15 players. Nick's pointing out you can go to 15 scholarships this year. We have heard that they would prefer to stay at 13 at K-State from a roster management standpoint. But I would say this, like, if you need to just push for one more guy because you like someone so much, I think you could go to 14.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be more of a Gene Taylor thing, because he was the one that's kind of putting at 13 because of the money constraint.
Yeah.
You'd have to fund extra scholarships now, with the way things are going. And so it's extra money in an era where, you're having to come up with $20.5 million extra dollars for revenue sharing. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of moving parts. You'd prefer to just wrap it up with 13. But speaking of wrapping it up, I got to go. So I'll let you guys take it from here.
Cole, did you have further thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to say, like, I mean, within the NIL era, probably with, I don't know what the cost of a scholarship is nowadays, but you could probably go to a donor and be like, hey, could we get $25K to fund this extra scholarship, and help the athletic department in that way? That could be an option if they needed to push to 14 scholarship guys. But, I just think there's potentially 3 to 5 guys that you can't count on to be contributors next year if you're at 13 scholarship guys, which doesn't leave you a lot of room for error. I mean, we saw what happened when Coleman Hawkins went out this year and Ashore got dismissed from the team. I mean, they're basically down to a 7-man rotation.
Yeah, and you're right. In your scenario that you're kind of playing out right now, you're talking about getting Repeat, already having Bashir, maybe getting Grajicic, and who was another one you were talking about? Or just
those if you add those 3 in, and I hypothetically said, let's assume Tyreek Smith gets his waiver and that Ani Enzo is back, then you're at 12.
Yeah. Well, hypothetically, I think you would expect to play. Like, I don't think they expect to play David Castillo less than they did last year. I don't think they expect to. And so you have David Castillo and CJ Jones right there with Repeat, Grajicic, and Doug as your 5 perimeter, and Bashir as your 6 perimeter wing players, and some of them are going to have to. I guess I'm a little lost on who plays the 4, but I think you expect Tyreek, Moby, and Ugo to be your depth in the front court.
And that's just not. I don't think that's a good enough front court DUI.
It might not be, but I think if you're keeping all 3 of those, I think that's what you're planning on.
Yeah. Now I'm fine with Tyreek Smith. It's just, again, gets back to, unless Ugo makes a significant jump that we didn't see all season, then I struggle with that. I think they need a really proven type center to help fill in the void there, play in the post. I also am a little concerned about the backcourt and just, playmaking. I think obviously you got Doug.
If you have Repeat, Bashir, and Doug, I think your playmaking is already better than it was last year.
Yeah, and I guess my question gets back to, I don't know if I fully trust Bashir's game to translate into a playmaking, create offense for others.
It's not creating for others, but it's creating for himself, and nobody could do that last year.
Yeah. I mean, look, we'll still see. I think there's 13 days left in the portal window. We'll see what happens. We'll see when we get news on by fall, assuming he enters like we were told weeks ago. Of course, we thought the same thing on Ani Enzo, and now that seems up in the air. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting how it plays out. Hopefully we'll get news on Repeat here soon and making it official. And then, one of the unique aspects of the EuroLeague stuff, DY, is a lot of these guys have contracts with their professional teams that you have to buy out. And so, K-State will have to likely, buy out their contract to land, a Grusich and a Repeat, which I don't think is going to be problematic. And I don't imagine the buyout is egregiously high. But that's something to consider as well. One of the other logistical challenges that you got to work through, and probably will take a couple, an extra week or 2.
I think that also, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point, but I know there was a coach, I think it was Mickey Joseph out there, that kind of tossed around the idea that maybe should be the system of how they do it college to college. Like if a school comes in and plucks a transfer away from Kansas State, they should have to pay Kansas State a transfer fee. That's sort of like buying them out, right? So, that'd be interesting, especially like in football. We already know that Kansas State's got a handful of players that have already been contacted by other programs. Now, let's hypothetically say one of their players from a spot that they are already kind of have depth at is getting pursued by another school. Like, if that school wants them, then maybe you say, okay, sure, and give us the transfer fee, the money.
I'm a big proponent in buyouts being put into NIL deals, to where the school gets, I think the transfer portal is obviously a big problem in college athletics. And I think that's one thing that could potentially slow the portal a little bit. Like, if I'm a school that thinks about, like, all right, let's say I'm Kentucky in the college hoop scene. Again, we know these programs have plenty of money, so maybe not the best example. But if I'm thinking, I got to go pay Kansas State $600,000 to buy out a kid, and then I got to pay another $2 million to land the kid, in terms of his NIL. And so I'm spending again, these dollar figures. It feels like some of these schools don't care right now. BYU,
maybe it's an endless pit of money, so it doesn't matter. But at least Kansas State would have $600,000 to spend in that scenario. But think about, then Kansas State spends that, then all you're doing is jacking up the cost of everybody.
Yeah, and not to get us so off topic here, but the thing is with the portal and NIL right now is it's free agency every year, and they essentially, these guys want to be traded like professional athletes, but they don't have the same restrictions that professional athletes. Professional athletes have contracts. Okay, they can't just bolt. It's not free agency every year unless you're on a 1-year deal. And then head coaches, when they leave, they have buyouts. And so, whenever that point gets brought up, like, I'm a big proponent in, at least putting a buyout in to where that school has to pay the school they're taking from, a certain amount of money. And that'll at least help that school financially, and whatever that NIL deal is. Now, when you think about some of these smaller schools, DY, like, what kind of buyouts are they going to be able to put in on some of these guys that blow up that they didn't expect? Like, a Siena or somebody, like, are they going to have like a $50,000 buyout on a guy? Like, their NIL deals aren't going to be, that large at some of those smaller schools. So I don't know how it would be calculated, but when you sign an NIL deal, you got to get the kid to be like, all right, I'll agree to a $500,000 buyout if I leave before 1 year. And again, that not the kid, not necessarily paying it that leaves, but the school that wants to poach him has to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's an interesting layer. I think my issue or concern with the NIL portal being associated with one another is that you have 1 year free agency. You're going to have I think over time, a bunch of kids that played at 3 or 4 different schools. It's like where your allegiance is to. I think that takes away a little bit of the college charm that once made fans invest in as excited. Now, to this point, fans have bellyached about it, but if you look at ratings and the money coming into the sport, it hasn't hurt viewership or the entertainment value of the sport yet. Maybe it will over time, but to this point, it hasn't. I always thought that it would, even probably already, and we're not seeing that. But if it does, I think it's because the fans lose that sense of pride and attachment to the roster that they once had.
You brought up something that kind of always annoys me of late, DY, is like people love to quote tweet those TV ratings numbers and be like, but I thought people said that people were going to stop watching college football or college basketball. I was like, I mean, the diehard fans are still watching, and more and more people are watching. The numbers are going up, but it's not sustainable. Like, eventually, like, if this thing turns in eventually 10 years down the road into the Power 2, and you turn away 20 programs at the Power 5 level and basically relegate them to nobodies, those fan bases aren't going to watch anymore. All right? They're not going to watch your SEC and Big Ten teams out there performing. They're going to be turned off by the sport. And eventually the numbers will move the other way. So, yeah, I just get annoyed when people are like, oh, you like use that as justification that there's not really a problem. There is a problem with the way things are running right now. Everybody complains about it. It's not efficient. And yeah, the college charm kind of going away. Look, I'm still going to watch K-State, and you are too, but hopefully they can figure out solutions. We'll see. It was interesting, not to get, again, too off topic, but the judge in the NCAA case and the revenue sharing really is pushing to grandfather the roster limits, which Chris Kleiman had really pushed hard just a week or so ago as a major talking point. And it seems the judge is in agreement with Chris Kleiman. And so maybe some things change there in the roster limits, and K-State can hit pause on having to cut 20 or so guys. I know a couple guys entered the portal that they moved on from this week that probably weren't going to play, but maybe you hit pause on cutting guys to see what happens in the next week.
And the guys that they moved on from, I think they might have been moving on from regardless.
Yep. So anyways, all right, you got anything else to add, DY? All right, we'll wrap this up. Hopefully we'll bring you some new football content, bring a guest on in the near future as well to talk about that. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of content.
And maybe have some football stuff on 3mile or patreon.com/3mile too, because we get some press conference stuff and try to, weigh in the football and basketball at the moment.
Yeah, and you were at practice yesterday. So
I was at practice yesterday. Van Malone we're recording this right now, Wednesday. Or is it today Wednesday?
Yeah.
Wednesday, April 9th, we get Van Malone at 1 o'clock. So
okay, well, some talent in that cornerback room with a lot of upside. So eager to hear from Van Malone. We'll bring you some content on Patreon as well. Get on over to the Discord. A lot of fun over there. And we have plenty more hoops coverage to be talking about as the portal seems to be heating up, and as well as the European recruiting scene. So more to come. Get on out to Holiday Distillery. Pick up some Ben Holiday bottled on bourbon at your local liquor store if you have a chance. Amazing stuff. And get over to Home Field Apparel. Again, 3mile24 at homefieldapparel.com as your discount code, and you will score 15% off your first order. For DY, I'm Cole Manbeck. John's gone, so we'll call it a wrap. Thanks to Nick Springer behind the scenes producing the show. As always, thank you for listening to another episode of 3 Mile.